Heisel, and I was an employee here at MUD a couple of years ago when we began a process of renovating the buildings and trying to demonstrate some different kinds of resource-efficient building technologies. And this structure is one aspect of that. It was built with 95% salvage materials, and we're now getting to the point of finishing up some of the interior work. It's a passive solar structure. Most of the materials came from two structures that were on this property when I first started working here. One of them was a greenhouse. That's where all this glass came from. The other was a railroad worker shack that was built almost 100 years ago. We decided to take these two buildings and reorient them to take better advantage of the sun. The first principle in saving energy with resource-efficient building design and technology is to make our buildings what we call solar ready. That means that they're longer in the east-west direction and the north-south direction is narrower. Originally, the railroad workers shack was longer. It was 20 feet long in the north-south direction, 10 feet wide in the east-west direction. So we decided to make better use of that structure, we would actually pick it up and move it. And that's what you see, the northern front of the building. That is the original railroad worker shack. The DHP on the end of the building there, that stands for Down Home Project. And this place was originally called the Down Home Project. MUD, the Missoula Urban Demonstration Project, became the name about 10 years ago. So we took these two buildings, we turned the railroad worker shack 90 degrees, and we put the greenhouse on the south side of it. The idea is that the sun will enter the greenhouse through this massive area of glass that we have here, and it'll strike the interior surfaces of the building. We are building now a thermal mass wall on the inside of that building, and that thermal mass will absorb all of that energy from the sun, not all of it, but a portion of the energy from the sun, and it'll hold that heat during the day and then release it again at night. So we have massive temperature fluctuations in this area. During the very hot sunny part of the day, a lot of heat is collected, that is released again at night, and that keeps the greenhouse warm, prevents things from freezing. As you can possibly see there, we've got pretty healthy tomato plants going in there. They'll stay healthy well into November, hopefully. And it's the thermal mass and the passive solar gain that's making that happen. I am passionate about passive solar because it has the potential to reduce our space heating costs in our housing by as much as 50% in bad conditions and easily 90% if you have good conditions and if you design your building right. Energy that's used to heat a home is, I think, 14% of the entire energy use in the United States. That's including transportation and industrial uses of energy. So residential heating is about 14%. Most of that is fossil fuels, the vast majority, and that contributes to greenhouse gases, global warming, and takes a tremendous toll on our environment. In fact, if you add all these impacts together, you get what's called an ecological footprint. The energy that goes into a home consumes about 25% of our ecological footprint. That's the second largest chunk of our ecological impact right after transportation. So we clearly have significant potential to reduce our impact on the environment by incorporating things like passive solar design, other kinds of solar technologies for heating our water. So what we've decided to use for thermal mass in this particular structure is sort of a creative thing. We're collecting olive oil cans from 3 different restaurants and a bakery in town. We collect about 20 to 25 cans a week, about 100 cans a month, and it's going to take us about 4 or 5 months to collect all the cans we need to build our thermal mass wall. We're using these cans for a couple of reasons. One, they're very resource efficient. We're saving them from the landfill, and we're putting water in them. Then we're sealing them with silicone and stacking them to create the wall that you see on your screen right now. The reason that these are a good material to use for thermal mass is that, first of all, water has the highest heat capacity of most conventional materials that we could use. We're storing it in smaller containers because that sets up a smaller convection loop, and that increases the efficiency of the wall. We're also using square metal containers because the metal is very conductive. It absorbs the heat very quickly, and because they're square, they stack easily, they stay close together, and they distribute the heat evenly throughout the wall. So we're backing this up with a substantial amount of Cobb, as you can see there, and that'll add an additional amount of thermal mass to the wall. And when we get this whole thing built and we put a few more cans of water in the greenhouse, that'll absorb about the maximum potential of the sunlight that we get here in this area.
A lot of people ask about Cobb because they're not familiar with it. Maybe how many people know what Cobb is or have heard about it? Okay, a handful. It's something that, looking at yeah, I could say this surely. All of our ancestors knew what Cobb was. All of us, whether we're from the Americas or from Europe or from Asia or whatnot, because 80% of the world's population still lives in houses made of earth. That number is crashing rapidly to baked cinder block honeycomb and baked ceramic bricks, which are very dangerous in seismic areas, like in Turkey we saw a few years ago when all the walls came tumbling down, and also all through the Andes, and also cinder block, the concrete block, hollow block houses, and then also formed concrete walls, very thin formed concrete walls, which you're seeing, concrete walls about 2 inches thick with some rebar or bamboo in them and poured, and those are replacing Cobb because people in Spanish they say they're called noble materials. The earthen houses are being replaced with noble materials, white man materials, modern materials, you know, whatever you want to call them, which have an initial investment of a lot more money, which makes it more difficult for people to build houses. We have the same problem here. Building houses is very, very expensive, more expensive than it needs to be, and very inaccessible for low-income people to build or buy their houses. And so when I say all of our ancestors knew about Cobb, it's because at one time, nearly 100% of the people had their structures were either earthen or natural building materials, whether they were woven reed walls in tropical areas or on stilts or thatched roofs or things like that. But most of Europe lived in Cobb houses, Northern Europe especially. And that's really interesting because when we think of Cobb here, the one that we know about is adobe. We've all heard of adobe. If I say adobe, almost everybody's heard of adobe. Well, adobe is Cobb made into a block, dried in the sun for a couple of days, and then stacked with Cobb mortar to stick them all together. And there's different sizes of adobe blocks, and depending on the tradition, and you often had, you know, a wall anywhere from a foot thick to 3 feet thick on some of the 400-and-some-year-old churches in Mexico, or even in Peru and in Colombia and other places. There's churches that are made of adobe blocks, and they're 100 feet tall, and they're made of earth. Well, when we went back to Europe, we were doing things with Cobb, though. And a lot of the houses in England, there's a technique that's some of you have probably heard of called wattle and daub. And that is essentially a weaving of willows and stalks of different small trees and whatnot, woven and then patched over with Cobb, like stucco houses, like this house here. But that was usually built within a timber frame structure. So they would have, like this is a timber frame that they rebuilt here. They would have posts, whatever they could afford to have, usually large oak timbers, every 10, 12 feet, sometimes smaller. And if you look at old houses in Europe, even line the streets, you see those diagonal braces, painted dark and then whitewashed stucco looking material in between, all those squares and frames, those are cob. Well, cob is a really good sense thing for people who were agrarian based and even city, because cob is made of principally three things. It's made of mineral soil. So what's that mean? When you build when you have a job site, or say this is our land here, we're going to create a space to build the house. We're going to clear off the topsoil first. And where's it going to go? It's going to go in the garden, because that is organic soil, and we need that for all of our agricultural stuff. And underneath that, in most places, there's only so much agricultural, soil that's good, that's organic soil and silty. And then underneath that is a mineral soil, which usually consists of either clay or sandy particles, or in good old Missoula, lots of rocks and gravel. If anybody have done any gardening or dug any holes or fence posts or any of that good stuff, there's a lot of rocks here. And most of our soil with under only a few inches is gravel mineral soil. Very little organic matter. Well, that is prime building material, because it is not in any sort of living process other than just its mineral state, and it's not going to decompose or change or whatnot. I mentioned clay because in most parts of the world there's some percentage of clay. In Missoula, there's no clay in this part of the valley. And this was the glacial Lake Missoula lake body. Those are a great building block, because clay is, unlike the mineral soil that we're looking for, like angular or rounded sandy stuff. We have a pile of sand there that we're going to work with, just so we don't have to start excavating anything, because this was already built. Clay is made with platelets. There are little oval shaped flat things, kind of like hands, that stick together with when they're wet with viscosity, and they also when they dry, they stay stuck together, cemented together. So clay is the cement. It's the building block of all this stuff, and it's been used for hundreds of years. There were pyramids made of it in Iran. The ziggurats of Iran were earthen block pyramids that are thousands of years old, and they're still there. They're crumbling now after not being taken care of. There is some maintenance that needs to be done if you want it to last for 1,000 years. But for most homes, it's very low maintenance. And so the concept of cob and building with silty, or not silty, mineral soil, clay, and one other thing, straw, a fiber that's left over from our agriculture. All of the oats and wheat and barley and rice and all the things that are part of our staples throughout the world have the shaft. Well, the shaft is of all of those grains is a really resilient, strong, and woody cellular structure that is unlike hay, which was feeding to the horses and cows and whatnot, which does decompose rapidly if it's left in a place where humidity can get to it and whatnot, and it will mold and whatnot. But straw won't. It's very resilient, and this is a straw bale here that's even used for a greenhouse, which has a lot of humidity in it. So that's our fiber that holds it all together. I've even done some tests where I made some cob blocks, just made a little cob thing, put them on the chopping block after a week of drying, and get out the big splitting maul and started trying to chop these things apart. Well, I started breaking through the structure of the clay and the soil. It started cracking and breaking and crumbling apart with swings of the axe. But it was very difficult to actually cut the block in half, because the straw had so much fiber tensile strength, just like fiberglass. They're putting fiberglass in sheetrock now. They're putting, they're making cars out of it. It has an incredible strength because of that flexibility, that resistance to breaking, and because of those strong microfibers that are in it. And so the other great part about it is, so this was our little crop here. We took off our good topsoil. We're growing a nice field of wheat. It's a byproduct. Well, what was the other thing they used? So they got their subsoil now to dig out their footings and whatnot to build their foundation. The rocks that they're picking from the field, they make their foundation with. So you start taking all the bad stuff out of your your good gardening space, and you use that to build your house with. And after you have a harvest, you have all your straw and thatch. They were also used thatch a lot. So it's a really common sense thing that we all knew how to do at one time. And so the Cobb re-evolution, I guess, is, and it's happening all over. I mean, we had a really successful workshop the summer before last in Ecuador, and we just got an email yesterday from our friend that we work with in Peru. One of the workshop participants has now built in their community store Cobb sofas and Cobb ovens and Cobb privacy walls and all these different things that they're building. Well, they're using it because it's right there, and it's so accessible, and they can do it with kids and grandmas and grandpas, and everybody can be involved. And so it's very low tech, but good sense. And so that's kind of like a little history about it. And I love to do it with a lot of people like this because you can get a lot done. The only limiting factor on other workshops I've done has been enough material, having it all there and ready. And today we've got 2 truckloads of material here and plenty of straw and not a huge project, and we've got a lot of hands. So we're gonna wish we had some music. We're gonna need some music to dance to when we get the Cobb pit going here. There's a lot of jobs to do in it. We can have people doing the building. We can trade off on different things so that everybody gets to see. It's a very accessible, hands-on kind of thing. So I guess if there's any questions right away, I'll answer questions. Other than that, we can start making it work. Let's do it. One thing I wanted to mention, Becky B., who works with the Cobb Cottage and she's put out a couple of books. They're available at Solar Plexus as well. She worked with the caravan that we work with in South America in Ecuador last year. This is a great little book, very accessible. It's written in a way for non-builders, people who have never framed up a wall or anything like that. And so this makes it very, very approachable for all kinds of people, especially if you want to get started on small things like this, like an outbuilding or something that you're like, well, this would be fun to do this, you know, and you have a potluck and you build something with your friends, because it is so accessible that anybody can do it. And there's a lot of room for creativity in Cobb because of its flexibility and thinking small, because it is, you're just building with earth, and you need to have a lot of that material. And so it thinks about the application. You want to make sure you use it for the right thing. I wouldn't recommend, for example, a Cobb wall done, like, say if this was still a Cobb house right here. This is mimicked after a Cobb house. The stucco idea came from Cobb, but that's a framed house. It's probably a 2x4 wall house, because that's how all these old houses in Missoula were. In '96, they did a comparison on the same site for the R values that you needed in siding and all the stuff that goes into modern construction with your chipboard and your siding and your insulation, fiberglass insulation or cellulose blown in or whatnot. Everything. In '96, the average per square foot factor was about $67, and the Cobb houses were coming out at about $10 per square foot. So right there, the accessibility issue really is something that makes it very, very exciting for people who want to do their own thing. And but the same thing, you need to plan how you're going to use it and how to make it best work for a place like Montana, for example. But the thing that you can do to find out how much clay content is in your subsoil, say if you dig out your area where you're going to build a foundation and you want to check, well, what's going to stick this together? Is there anything that will stick it together? You put it in a jar of water. Any jar will do. Some of your soil, and about half soil and half, and fill it up with water. Shake it up and then let it settle out for a day, and it'll stratify. It'll break down into layers. All your gravel will be at the bottom, your sand, and then it'll go into silty layers, organic silty layers, and the clay will be a layer on top. Now, if you have, I think Becky has an example of that, determining whether or not you can build with one of your subsoils purely. Now, last couple of years I've been doing some stuff in the Lola Valley, and there's not really much clay in that area either, but we were able to get some stuff without adding clay to it. when we first did it. We did a dry hand-stacked rock foundation on a sunroom, and we didn't bring any extra clay in at that time. Later, when we were building up the walls, because we weren't depending so much on gravity holding the rocks together, because it was just fitted, well fitted, we did bring in clay. I would recommend around here, there is clay available, and for free, that you can just go fill up a pickup load of it, you know, bucket load at a time, and that's what I've done mostly around here. But you can do this test, and this is a great book too. You guys can look at it different time here that shows some of the Cobb constructions that have been done. Most of these were done in Oregon, which is great because people think there's a joke. Well, won't Cobb just melt in the rain? Won't it just like fall apart if a windy rainstorm comes in? No, it won't. It will absorb a little bit of water on the surface if it's not protected well by eaves. I built somewhat purposely. Well, this structure has very little eaves on the side of it. I mean, even for typical construction. I mean, there's probably only 6 inches of coverage or so out there. And do you know what year this was built?
1895.
No, the
that. 1995, I think.
Okay, so it's like 7 years old, and nothing's been done to this Cobb, as far as I know, on the outside. I mean, as far as maintaining it or anyway. I'll let you look for that, the jar test in there, the percentages that you need for that. But with Cobb, it is not going to melt. It will absorb a little bit of water, and you can. I've done a few things to show all my. I was the worst cynic. I was like, no, you got to build with concrete. You can't. You know, you got to have some lime in there. You got to have some. Well, there are plasters that you can coat with, like in straw bale. They're using an earthen plaster like Cobb is a much better coating for a straw bale house, as far as I'm concerned, because it does breathe and it doesn't trap humidity, which is a danger to bales. And so they're doing that a lot in Oregon, and they have a lot more rain than we do. We're pushing 10 inches a year, maybe, you know, with rain. So, any other questions?
Sorry, we got a call on Friday asking about how it withstands seismic activity. Some structural engineers were very concerned that we were teaching people to build houses that would fall down.
That's a great one, because Cobb is superior, as I mentioned, to most of the construction techniques that are being built in third world countries now. The things that are replacing Cobb are more dangerous. The reason is because Cobb, if you're using the soil from this place, it's a monolithic structure. It's a pedestaled. The Cobb, you start it fat and you work it up and you taper it, getting thinner, because it's an organic thing and it's like a tree trunk, and it's getting a little bit thinner at the top. Generally, there are load-bearing Cobb walls. People, I mean, you have to build buttressed, you know, heavy corners, just like adobe houses were load-bearing. They had the roof sit on top of them and whatnot. But what's great about Cobb is that there are no straight lines in it. So if you get a crack from some seismic activity, it's going to go crack, and it's going to disperse, and it very seldom falls down, and it can be replaced. I mean, it can be repaired. And that's what they've found in most places. Turkey was a great example. They built timber framed houses there that flexed with the seismic activity, and they had infill of Cobb. And they had tiled slate roofs. The tiles would all slide off in a big tremor, but they'd just go put them back on, and they'd patch the crack, and the house was still there. The new houses killed people. They came down on people. Now, because of that thermal mass, they just move with the earth usually. And I mean, not thermal mass, but earth and mass.
For first world countries and most of us, would you recommend building a timber frame structure according to local building codes and then infilling with Cobb?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to build a traditional house, you know, sort of square box, whatnot, you know, but you can also do rounded corners with timbers. The place that I worked on, I did a combination of cordwood construction with Cobb and straw insulation here in Montana, and I did with just a few timbers, just to give it that. Well, the other great thing about it, working with a timber frame, you're using you don't need huge timbers. Depending, you want to figure it out, be strong enough for the most extreme snow load and whatnot. But other than that, a roof here, I mean, we've all seen the 2x4 framed up carports that have survived through all the winters in Missoula. And if you over-engineer a small roof structure, the great part about having that is if you build that into your foundation, you can move into that space, start doing your cob, and you're in the shade, you're out of the rain, and all your cobbers are happy because you're just infilling in the pole structure. It doesn't need to be lam beams that are this big. It can be a really simple structure. I've used lodgepole pines, which are easy to find in the woods that are still standing but dead off the ground, not rotted, and there's a lot of really low. Every rancher in Montana has built pole barns to cover their hay and straw in the winter out of little stuff, and they hold up. And so the same kind of thing, build a small pole structure and infill. And as far as in-city stuff, hard. I'm sure it's hard. I mean, you guys probably even ran into certain problems in building this, even though it's not a living space. Right. So this is going to be really interesting because we're going to fill in some of the gaps, and Cobb is going to be, we're going to use its versatility today because this is something that we're putting two technologies, low-tech technologies together here. Any other questions before we get muddy?
Just a quick one about code. So if you tried to build a Cobb structure without timber frame in Missoula, would the code enforcement people let you do it? Or?
Probably not. Probably not.
Are you finding, like, any places in the country, I know like the straw bale in New Mexico, certain building departments are really working with people and trying to write it into the code. Is that happening with Cobb?
Most of what is happening is that builders are trying to educate code people. Exactly, and so that they can do it. Because most traditional code people, building codes are designed, they're good for a good reason. I mean, they're out there for safety and to have, good expectations in building. But they've also created a lot of bureaucracy and made it really difficult for people to do things that are out of the box. In this case, literally out of the box, and rounded things and whatnot. So Cobb, most of what's been happening has been happening in rural places, but I know that with the same thing, if you can convince them that you're building a post and beam structure, that the structure is sound, they can't really. If you want to fill it in with cardboard, you can, and that's kind of what it comes down to, and then you can also get away with a certain amount of things with grandfather clauses, and like if you took a structure that was already a framed structure, I know this has been done with light straw. It's a technique used with just clay slip, mixing up a soup of clay, pouring it over straw like salad dressing, and then tossing it all, and then putting it into forms and creating like 8-inch walls. I've seen houses like this that were redone, so they were retrofitted with this light straw insulation that was made of earth and straw. It's not that far from clay, or from Cobb. So it could be done in retrofitting kinds of, like if you had a regular home and you wanted just Cobb floor, for example, there's a great place for it to use Cobb. We're going to be using a Cobb floor in here for outbuildings or for homes. If you're not building, Cobb has a lot of uses. We're going to be doing a Cobb floor in here. I'm sealing one up right now that's just finished. We got to do the final waxing of it, and it's beautiful. We printed leaves from the garden into it, and it's an earthen. It's sort of a, what color would you call it? Saddle leather, a real nice leather colored floor, and it's beautiful. And that's what we're going to have in here, and it's different colors of tones of browns and whatnot. And we sealed it with linseed oil, and then we're going to put a wax over it, and it looks like a really nice. And what's funny is now they're selling, all the concrete workers are making stuff that are trying to look like adobe floors. They're staining and acid etching all these concrete floors. Concrete zaps you. If you're working on concrete all day long, it'll suck the energy right out of you. Anybody who's had to stand on a pad for 8 hours a day knows the concrete will suck it out of you. There's a resilience in a Cobb floor or adobe floors that doesn't do that, doesn't have that same problem. So we can talk while we're doing it too. So let's start We've got a lot of people here, so this is great. Let's see what we can do here. We're gonna, there's several ways to do it. I'm really glad it warmed up a bit here today because I did some cobbing in October a couple years ago that was a little frigid. There's ways to do it without getting in too much into the thing, but the most fun is to roll your pants up, take your shoes and socks off, and get into it. Obviously, we've got a lot of people, so you can take turns, and I assume we have plenty of water, so we can all wash off and everything. And what's great is Cobb doesn't stain your clothes. It's just dirt. It just comes right out. So you can get dirty. What we're going to do, we're going to make a couple of pits with these bales. This is my favorite technique. I'm going to make one over here, and then we'll make one where those other bales are. If they're a little smaller, it makes it easier to... Actually, some people can go grab those other bales, and we'll make a couple of squares, and we're going to line the squares with tarps, and we're going to bring wheelbarrow loads of our stuff, of our mixture. Now this is some old straw that's been sitting out for a while, it looks like here. But this older decomposed straw, that's kind of more broken down, it's probably been out there for a couple of winters. Actually, yeah, if we can just make a little square here. That one's pretty solid, good. Now what we're going to do here, where's that tarp? There's one. I guess we need to make a path through there. If you can just put that in right there. This guy's falling apart, so we're going to use it. Okay. Right there. Closing it in. Excellent. So this technique is really nice because this is some of our material we're using, but it also can be used for scaffolding. It can be used to sit down and take a break. It can be used to make your cob pit. I'm just going to fill this in. This is our salad bowl today. I couldn't remember making the cooking reference in the newspaper. There's a little bite that came out in the Missoulian yesterday, or the day before, and now I remember why. Because it is a lot like cooking. Let's grab another one of those tarps. Is there one of those silver tarps, or any of those tarps? Let's make another pit over here. So we're gonna bring in our materials. Somebody can go grab a shovel. Is there another wheelbarrow, Matt? Is there just one wheelbarrow?
I think we've got another one around here.
If we could get another, if one person could go and just start filling up a wheelbarrow full of clay. And some people can go help shovel. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Having plenty of cheap tarps around is always good for cobbing. If you're doing a ton of it, they won't last forever, obviously, but well, cob is, you're all going to remember, I always say it's in our blood memory. Cob is, we all know how to do this. And these are all just new recipes to do the same thing that we've all eaten before or something. But these little things like this pit, well, it can be done in a hole in the ground. It can be done just out on a great big tarp in the middle, making the pit in the mixture, putting the water into the mixture. But this is nice because if just like in clay, when you put the old bread bag over it or something so it doesn't crack the first day because it dried too fast, well, this is the same stuff. We don't want it to dry too fast. And what's nice about cob is it is forgiving. When it does crack, we've picked up a couple of sponges over at Safeway, really high tech. We just massage a little water into it and the cracks disappear and you can massage the cracks out of it. For a cob floor, you let it crack, you let it do its thing, and it'll find the big places where it wants to settle out and it'll separate in those one places. You let it dry and then you go back in and you fill it up with a little clay. So, and some people even fill it with different colors of clay, so you get a really nice patterning in the floor before you seal it. So it's pretty interesting. Okay, this is great clay, and if you go ahead and pass a couple of these around and start breaking them apart just to see here. you can see those platelets in the sedimentation, in the clay. They're microscopic, but I mean, you can see that patterning of layers of flat material in here. And what's great about this clay is it's pure clay. So we know we're gonna get a great mix here. When you're dealing with just your subsoil from a building site, you kind of gotta sometimes hit and miss, because where you dig the hole here, when that hole's run dry and you're digging, you know, say you're digging a foundation or something and you're trying to get that subsoil, well, we all know the dirt's a little different everywhere. Well, this stuff is pure. So what we're gonna do, let's go ahead, people can go ahead and start breaking up. This is the fun part for kids. I always find it, they love breaking clay balls. This is good. So we can all start breaking up the big chunks and start throwing some shovelfuls in here and in the other one there, and get the bottom filled up to about 4 inches, I'd say. Let's make a good big batch. We got lots of people. Yeah, great.
You want a shovel?
And we want to break up those balls, because if we don't break them up too much, someone can get in there and start crushing them up too. Because if we don't break them, they're going to be pure clay balls, and they won't harden as well as the others, and they'll make little red patches in the floor or in the wall, and that's okay, but it's not as consistent. We want to get a real good mix.
What's about the maximum size you want?
I mean, we're getting down there. This, when it starts getting wet, they will soften. See,
I've decided it's
time to pull that stock. This is great. Yeah, this is. Oh, let's get it a little deeper. It doesn't have to be totally fine, so don't worry about getting some in there. And we'll get this filled up in there. The other great thing about this many people around is you can imagine you could get large batches going here. And what's nice about the tarp technique is we can pull the tarp. We're going to pull from one corner to the other, flipping the bottom layer onto the top, and then we can squish that down into it. So using tarps is really great. Like if it froze while it was still wet, you could have some problems of just like frost staying in it, but or you know, the freezing water staying in it and then not wanting to dry out. But I think we've also you can dry clothes on the line in the winter too. They will dry. So it will dry, and I've had it into the mid-October. I've done it. So, sí, gracias.
What was the ratio again? The ratio of sand to clay and.
We're gonna look at it,
Okay.
because this is great sand, and so we're just gonna look at it. And we're gonna fill this up to about 4 inches or so. Let's fill it up that deep with sand. And while they're filling it, this is just to get our overall quantity. We're going to do a 50-50 ratio and see how that looks.
We're starting out with a 50-50.
Yeah, and you can also measure just by wheelbarrow loads or 5-gallon bucket loads or shovelfuls or whatever. And while you're doing it, if other people can start mixing it so that this all starts getting mixed up right away. And the feet is the best way to get in there.
Barefoot?
Barefoot's the best because you can feel, oh, is that sand or is that clay that I'm digging in? This is what the 3 little pigs, this is what they needed to do, because you got the straw going on and you got clay, which is what bricks are made out of, but you don't have to fire them. Bricks are great, but they use a huge amount of natural resources in the world. Terracotta bricks are the other #1 building source that's replacing this. And they're deforesting countries left and right to fire bricks. Yeah, you guys have got the mix going on. What I'd sometimes do is do one side and then everybody go to the other side and then flip it all back. And it helps to have a big enough tarp so that you can get some hands on it. Okay, we've got a good mix going on here. So, yeah, this is a good load. This will keep us busy for a while. I have not been able. This is really, this is the Jack's Masonry special here. What is that? About $100 worth of sand over there, Matt? I think he said so, with delivery. But that was great, because otherwise we would have all been digging and sifting.
So right now Matt is showing us how to reinforce the walls so the Cobb has something to stick to, and the black hands are the water that's going to help insulate this whole project.
Because that side will be open. And
So do you think Cobb is actually something that you would use in your own house?
Yeah, I think I would.
Yeah? Are you skeptical about the whole idea at all? Or?
No.
No?
No, I think we need to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
And we're a little short on exactly how much of everything works, but no, the idea is perfectly sound. We've been doing it for 40,000 years.
Yeah. Would you want to use olive oil cans filled with water in your own house, or are you skeptical about it?
Oh, no, I would not do that. That's the experimental part.
Yeah.
We want that to work long enough to teach us some things. How much water do you need? You know. I think that what I end up with is going to be pretty close to an olive oil can.
Yeah.
Little by little to start mixing it. If it seems like it's too cold and people don't want to be that brave, we can also pull it with a hoe and start flipping it. You don't really have to measure because we have enough material that if we get too wet, we can always add a little more. It's all right. Okay.
It's cold. Okay.
It'll be amazing. You'll be amazed how much how much water goes into this. And then also how long it takes for the water to get to the bottom. We're going to be flipping it. Okay, it seems like there's a lot of water in here, but it's not because there's so much dry trapped on the bottom. So if the people in the pit want to pull that corner towards this water here, that's the best way. Kind of pull it towards you. Okay, that's good. And now you can slide all that onto the top of this water, and then you have the water on the bottom, and that makes it a lot easier to mix it. And then once you get there, then if you step on that, it'll make a pretty good mix. There you go, see? And then it starts getting easier the more it's mixed, you know? It starts getting easier. And then when you start to get stuck, and your feet start getting like, okay, it's not dry on the bottom and wet on top. When it's all relatively thick, like really hearty mashed potatoes with the skins on them still. Then we're gonna add the straw. And the straw is going to start sucking some of that water out, and then we're going to keep putting it in there until it doesn't take it anymore, until the straw stops getting coated, and then all that is going to get dried out enough by the straw that we'll be able to make little burritos, big fat burritos of Cobb rolls, and we'll make a line of people going in and out, and others can sit around on the bales making their little sculptures of Cobb burritos. And yeah, this mix here, oh, and it's so fine because it's so sandy. I'm used to working with more gravelly stuff. This is going to be really nice. So this purely mixed here is going to be about what we're looking for before we start adding sand. Straw. But then it's going to get a lot drier, so it actually doesn't even stick to your hand. It'll stick in your hand, a ball of it, but you won't have it on your hand. That's how dry we're going to get it down to.
I need more water, right?
There's a lot on the bottom.
Yep. Yeah, let's Yes. Yeah, definitely need more water. Can we get some water? Where do you want it? You guys know better than I do at this point.
Right over here. Okay, gradual.
And see if they can get their feet underneath it and start lifting up the dry stuff.
Gotta get all the way down.
Yeah, so there can't be any dry in it.
Otherwise we won't have any bonding.
Yeah. Well, and then also it will, it won't stick together. But we will almost be able to just roll it off the tarp into like a great big Cobb ball, and then from that we're gonna, like a big bread dough.
Single mass?
Yeah, and then, so it's not like concrete. With the floor you can get away with more like this, but it's actually better even thicker. And since we're gonna start with the wall, we'll probably need a couple more of these to like do that wall. It's amazing how much mass is in there. Yeah, if you roll it, you get some of that dry stuff off the bottom. There you go. Great.
They found gold mine down there.
Do we need to end?
Okay, now let it relax. Okay, see how it starts pulling off the tarp? Okay, there's a little bit of clay dry there. That's good. So now we can just pull that, and let's do it. Go ahead and mix that, and we're going to do it one more time the other way. And then we'll go ahead and start putting straw into it.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Tougher if you're in the hole, right?
Yeah, see, and that's more just digging, and you know, with shovels and hoes and rakes and whatever you have, and sticks. You know, that was, hoes work pretty good for getting down there. But the other thing is, if you did it in a hole that was your subsoil was what you were using, you would just use off the top. The other way to do it is on a wood floor. You know, just a piece of plywood or what that you can scrape.
Yeah, like you're making like a cookie dough.
Yeah, exactly. Like kneading it out like the breadboard. Yeah. You guys did the roll test, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this straw is really old, and it's not going to have as much strength because it's starting to almost break down more. But it's going to be really good for the floor because we don't need it to be huge fibers, and we're not holding up a whole wall. And we also have chicken wire built into it. So I didn't worry about saying, oh, we need to get new straw. It'd be great to get some straw that's been dried for a year, that's really strong, and it came from last summer's cut, and it was put up somewhere and dry. This is kind of moldy smelling.
It's got a bunch of
Oh, and
bugs
it's got a
in it.
bunch of bugs in it.
Have you looked at all the bales?
No, I haven't.
It has tons of bugs right now.
Is that?
Will the bugs just be killed and
That's too bad.
to exist in there? Oh well.
I wonder, let's look, this might have been on the ground. I want to see if there's... Just start breaking it and fluff it apart so that it's all free of the bale. Okay, that's good for now.
Okay.
And now, smash that all...
Put our bail back, right?
Yeah, we need it.
Okay, we're not going to use the bug bale.
What's the reason for that?
I would just worry that it's already in the process of decomposition, and you're going to have bugs, and I don't want bugs burrowing out of the wall.
Wouldn't it kill them just being inside the no air and whatnot?
I'm not too expert on burrowing insects. You know, I'm the roly-poly tech. I'm not.
All we're doing is building condos for them.
Exactly. Yeah, probably.
Start making
Okay. Go ahead and start smashing it down into the cob. I would just put it in the composter because that's all it is right now. It's already going. As you see, that the cob is absorbing this stuff with these dancers here almost as fast as we can. And you want to get it break it all apart real good so it doesn't get a glob of hay or straw. I mean. Okay.
Just put it on the side where it was.
Great.
Let's do a roll.
Good compost. Oh, good mulch.
Oh yeah, that's what we use it for.
Yeah. You guys have got it. It's intuitive. See, you're just going for it. When you see a straw thing like that, go for it. Smash it and separate it and get it mixed in there with the rest. And then get it all the straw out of it, and then do it all again. And just keep doing it until it's almost like, okay, now it's not taking it anymore. But when you can,
more straw,
it's not like if you can roll it back and forth and you start seeing like you start seeing the straw throughout, then it's saturated with straw. Because we want to get it throughout this whole thing. It's going to be in every bit of what we're using here today.
We've only done like this much so far, right?
Right.
In here, no, I put in one more.
Oh, you did another big chunk too. That's right. So here, yeah. So you guys have got it. Just mixing it in. This is where it just really gets fun because you mix it all in, smash it all down until it kind of disappears, and then we'll flip it all over, roll the more clay side to the top, and then smush that back down, flip it the other way, smush that down, and then we'll put straw on it again.
We need more, right? Or is this good?
Keep getting all the straw out of sight so that it all gets mixed, and we start seeing, if you see a patch of a clump of straw like that, there's one there that's like kind of all bunched together, maybe pull it apart. Because you do want these fibers to be sort of in an organic pattern, not all clumped together. Straw is amazingly strong. It's when it's dried into this, I mentioned cutting it with the axe, and it's an incredible thing. It's because it has the flexibility and the structure to it that it's not that much really. That's why it's good to have a few pits going. At a certain point, you can get rid of the bales altogether if it's dry enough, and really sift the straw over it so that it's all spread out.
How much like structure would that much cod make?
Well, if you were doing an 8-inch thick wall, it'd only make that much, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, do it in little bits at a time so you can handle it there.
So we use for ovens or anything?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. In fact, that's what the caravan that I did in Ecuador and now in Peru, they're doing ovens with it. Big pizza ovens and bread ovens. It's great. Yeah. Yeah, you could use it for that too. It'd be great. That's leftover from before, but
Sort of like bread dough.
yeah, we're getting it to where we can actually make a roll. This is a little sandy almost.
So now you need to add a little clay.
Yeah.
And start over.
Well, it'll just mix it in just a little bit. It doesn't take that much actually.
Really sprinkle it.
Yeah, try to get the real fine stuff that's been more crushed.
So what do you think the general ratio is? It's not 50-50.
No, it's, well, it depends. Like this sand is real fine, so it doesn't have any clay in it. And with a subsoil, you might have some clay or some binders in it. And so I usually get in the past I've done about a third clay, but this might be a little more than a third clay in this case. So
there's usually more sand.
yeah, more. That's the glue is binding all the other stuff. You know, the clay is the glue, but
So there's usually more sand than clay.
more mineral soil, I'll call it, or sand, because it can be gravelly or dirt that's not organic.
So you could actually use larger than the sand?
Sure. If you look at the side of the straw bale when it's got, you can see rocks in it. And it's even a stucco. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, then how did you guys make it? How did you mix it?
Oh, I didn't do the mixing.
Oh, okay. You did the application on the wall?
Yeah.
Cool. Like a lot of African houses that are built out of this, you see like a tapered buttress coming out, like an elephant foot coming off the side, so giving it, if it's a long straight wall. And old churches, you see that too, with brickwork even. Well, what's great is it's easier to mix when it's wet than when it's dry, like when you first start getting it. It's easier to mix in a little dry into a big wet mixed match on top than having all that dry stuck on the bottom and having too much. So, you know, it looks good though.
Does the straw matter?
The longer and like I was saying, like straw that we had cut last year is going to be, this stuff's more broken up, it looks like, and not as long. Longer stuff is going to have more strength in long directions. So if you're doing a big, long, straight wall, great long straw is going to be nice. Or for building buttresses.
Really fresh hay.
You don't want to use hay at all because it will break down. Straw? Okay, yeah.
Excuse me.
No, the straw comes from grains, pure grain. So if you had a field of barley or wheat or rye or oats, or not, yeah, oats or even rice straw. Any of those straws will work, and that's what's typically used. And so it's the byproduct of your grain harvesting.
But around here, does the farmer leave it on the ground?
No, they usually bale it too.
They bale it
Yep.
too? And then
Yep.
what do they use it for? It's not really good food.
It's, no, oh yeah, look at that. I mean, oh, this is great. This is great. I think it's great. I think we could start making, like making some big burritos. Okay, so now we're moving on. We're gonna start building.
Gather around.
We've got our first cob log here. It's holding itself together really well. You can toss it back and forth. In fact, that's a lot of how you build. If you're building high, you toss the cob logs up, and the people catch them, and they put them into place, and you squish them in there. You can make really big ones if you're making like the base of a wall that's, you know, a foot thick or something, so you could bring a big blob of it. The more that it is squished into the one before it, it makes one big structure. It's all going to melt together as it dries and all this structure. So we don't want to have too small ones, because then this fiber isn't going to be part of the fiber above or below it, and we don't want to make them unmanageable either. So what's great is we're just going to, everybody kind of gets their own rhythm and with their own texture, and then you start seeing the recipes that certain people make. If you're doing stuff around a window, you know that she makes the really nice long skinny ones that are good for putting along the trim work, and she makes the really nice big stout strong ones that are good for along the bases or where you need a lot of it but they still hold together. So everybody's got their way of doing it, and you'll experiment and see what's the most comfortable. And so we can have some people who have been mixing, maybe start pulling out these, and then others maybe want to start building in here, and then we can trade off too and see how that process goes. And then we'll probably have time to whip out another batch to do the floor, and that'll be a little faster because we're going to do it thinner, and we're going to literally probably shovel it in there and start spreading that with some boards. No, we're going to do it with pieces of scrap wood, and I brought one concrete trowel for some finished spots. And so whoever wants to come inside and start laying down some burritos, well, come on in. This is going to be interesting because essentially we're building a wall on the back of a wall that's already built. You know, this is a framed up wall, but it's only framed because we wanted to give structure to the cans. So essentially we could build this wall without any of this structure. What would be holding up this place then would be, come on in.
No, I'm going to throw it.
Oh, okay. This is the post, and there's the beam, and there's a post on each end. That would hold up the whole roof, and we could literally, where this wall is, we could build a cob wall to fill in. But in this case, since we're building a trome wall, we're going to do a little of both. So just start. Let's start making a row across the bottom here, and kind of just squishing them down. And there you go. And we want to make it so that it's if you flatten it out, flatten it so that it curves towards the wall, so that they fall in towards the wall.
Right.
So you don't want to squish them off, because then they'll start splooging a lot. Because they have a lot of structure, but they are still in a plastic state.
So you want them like that?
So we want to have them so that they're, exactly.
Can I just set these on the gravel? Is that
good?
That's great, yeah, and overlapping is good too. You can
set these on the gravel while they're...
just let's put them right in place, or hand them to somebody. And you can overlap it and pull towards the next one here like that.
Cool.
And just keep them going. These are great because they're real big, and we're getting the base. These are really good.
The big ones. We're working on the base, so we need to...
Faster than we can plant them.
That's good.
How would you keep it straight if all this framing wasn't here?
You'd make a bigger base, and so you'd start going, and then you just throw the level on it every now and then, and you would allow for a certain amount of undulation and tapering. So, you know, in a wall this size, I'd probably want it to be about as big as our base plus that other 6 inches over there. and make it a 10-inch wall.
Nice big fat one.
And then
Takes a little while for it to get down what we're doing here.
Are we gonna go over this?
we're gonna go. Actually, we're gonna go just to the beam here, because we want this post here to still be exposed. Because we want to show as a demonstration that this is a post and beam structure. So exactly, you can just kind of squish in it. We're gonna let it even undulate out. Make sure that you can go ahead and squish it down, and let it go into the chicken wire, and then just kind of smooth off on that corner. That's all right. That's all right. It'll fit right here. It'll be right here.
It'd be okay?
So we go ahead and build on top now, or?
Yeah. And now to build on top, you can squish your fingers into a little bit and make some spaces. It's real lot like scratch and slip in clay building. And you feel how this is pretty dry and it's pretty solid. I mean, it's going to hold that next layer.
Put your fingers in to get some texture.
If you
start in the next row?
Yeah, go for it. And actually, go ahead and put a real thick one down there, and make that a little thicker. Let it splooge down to the next layer.
Where's the next one?
And go all the way to the beam, and you can even fill in around that corner there, so we can fill in that space, because we're going to probably fill in all the way to the other side.
We're not leaving that out.
Just on the surface, we're going to build into that space there with Cobb.
We need both movers and shakers here.
When you start getting on the second row, you start squishing the first up into the second, or vice versa. You want it you massage it into one piece monolithic wall.
They go by spell.
You want to start your house swap?
Keep an eye on that.
We're still tilting down into the wall, right?
Right. Now they're getting cute out there. There's one that's kind of rectangular.
Oh, really? Why is that?
This batch ended up getting real sandy.
What's that?
What do you mean by splooging?
Splooging? There's splooging in there. They don't want splooging.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Fresh blenders being drained. Well, we have a couple of blenders that could get worn out. So we want to throw some fresh energy into this, fresh blend. And when I said, you can't go wrong.
We're ready to get to the beam, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, to get your signal straight over there.
I think it needs to be more of a square form.
Look at that. It's a Cobb wall. You guys are... Yeah, lay them in there. We got plenty of hands patting and laying. Yeah. What do you think?
A lot better.
Give me a big one so I can get an idea for what we're... All right, that's sticky. Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like to be able to do that.
That's good.
Just for at least for a second, you know.
Yeah.
See how long. There we go. This is good. This is the stick test. It's good. Oh, yeah, look at that.
Mudslide.
What's the deal with making this, getting making bricks,
Mm-hmm.
a form
Mold.
thing? Yeah, and would that be real feasible for the floor, or what applications?
Yeah, you can make like pavers to do like for they make those concrete ones that they make for patios and stuff.
Right.
You could do adobe pavers essentially that are blocks that you make interlocking patterns. Like you could make a jig that you molded them so that they had that. I have a friend who even made a round mold that went around sonotubes. There are those concrete forms or around a post. So he had an adobe mold that he made, so his blocks went around the post, and the post was buried inside of a Cobb pillar. So it was real pretty, and it looked a lot nicer than just a post or a metal beam or something, and you know, things like that. You can make them any shape, and this will work for in any mold.
Do they ever make walls out of bricks?
Sure, that's adobe. Yeah.
Oh,
that's the adobe is the brick made of earth, clay, and straw. That's the real definition of it. Yeah. And what makes this better in some sense is it's a little lower tech because, well, I mean, adobe's pretty low tech, but you need to, know how to stack and do the masonry work and cut your edges and your mortar joints and all that stuff. But it's pretty intuitive too.
Well, you say this is better.
This is stronger.
Oh.
Unless you're making like a 3-foot wall or something, because there's no mortar joints. Now, stronger here is not that much of a deal because we don't have much seismic activity. But if you have an earthquake, it'll shift along those mortar joints. Everywhere there's brick houses and stuff, that'll shift on those straight lines. Whenever you have a straight line, it's a lot more apt to find a fault and crack, and it'll follow that straight line. You see, look at any brick building in Missoula, any of the older brick buildings, and you'll see straight lines that just follows the mortar,
right,
where they've shifted and settled over too much weight on one side of a factory or something. And this, what's good about it is, since it's all organic in one big thing, there's no mortar joints. So it usually just moves with the earth and doesn't crack. It's part of the earth.
You didn't think there were any, did you?
We got 2 to 1, is that about?
2 clay to 1 sand?
Yeah. Well, more or less.
What's so good about this is it's showing it's a Cobb wall.
Yeah.
I mean, you can pound nails in this thing. Hang the tools on it.
I don't have to worry about nails going through and puncturing it.
You can put nails into this into the hole?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I mean, you'd have to be a 16 penny or something, but
You got the what?
a big sinker. You can put lag bolts in it with expansion if you had to have like something really heavy on it.
Is that like a molly bolt?
Like this guy right here. That's why a wood lag bolt. You could put it in tapered, and you'd want to pre-drill it a little bit, but if, with the right angle, you could hang pretty heavy stuff on it. Like if you were hanging like a hammock or something, I'd want to go off a post. But for some, we've already got there's insulation. It's not actually on the earth, so it's not going to get cold through it. So we're not going to do a lot of straw for any insulation factor, only just for strength. Let's go ahead and just mix that up a little bit more.
For the floor.
Yeah. And then we're gonna do this. We're gonna spread it out as far as we can, real thin, to get a fiber mesh down with that straw. And then we'll come in with a thin layer of the soupier stuff that floats, just like in concrete work. You kind of float it and get it real smooth. Who's worked in concrete here? You have. You're probably a lot better at this than I am. So.
If it was right on the ground, would you put a lot of straw in it?
I would do a couple of layers of different kinds of densities, because whenever you change a density layer, the
swampers are burning out.
it changes how fast the cold or heat can go through it. So if you put more straw on the bottom, it would be warmer, definitely.
Less straw.
They're like building another one.
We're heading out, but thanks very much.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. Good luck with all you're doing.
I got you dirty again, sorry.
No problem.
Watch out.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you for coming.
I can't get through the doorway.
Let's see if we can get it up on the ramp.
Oh.
This is how they must have done it.
With tarps.
Canvas tarps, linen tarps. Okay, I guess we're going to start back in the corner here. That's probably good.
Good. Good work.
Okay, that was great. That was great. Okay, there's a few ways to go about this. I mean, essentially, it's just like pouring a floor, and the floor has kind of gotten roughed up again just from us working on it. But we want to just, how far, which side would be better to work this way, or for as far as tool library things?
Let's, I guess, start over there and work this way.
Okay, and you'll see, just like what happened with the wall, and this is thinner, this is just going to flatten out. And I'm just going to just get it like that, and we're just going to smooth it probably up to about where this plate is, this 2x6 plate. And a little lower, actually, because then we're going to, this is almost thin enough. We can probably just float that soupy enough without having to do too much other layer. So, and then
about half an inch below the plate.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe we'll start there and work our way here so we can see, and start away from the stuff because it'll squish to the wall, so that you don't get a wall going up, too steep. And then this will be interesting on this gravel because that's going to make a solid base. You can come back with a bucket, or where's our concrete guy?
I've done concrete.
Okay.
Not a concrete guy, though.
Okay. I mean, what's the trick for a large pad of getting
I've
screws
seen, boards first as a preliminary
Sure.
thing, and then take this screw. That's basically what I'm looking for.
And I always wonder how. So I guess you just, when you're stepping in it or making like a little bridge over it or something for a big space,
right?
You're smoothing out where you've been stepping or whatnot. Okay.
Yeah, and you can
so
add stuff to it.
yeah. So that's the trick, I guess. I mean, it's not brain science surgery, and but it makes a pretty nice floor with this cob. This cob will be real dusty if you don't seal it, but it is a pretty hard surface. Like, you don't have to seal it, but it will leave little white clay tracks. Go ahead and grab people and come on in. Can't go wrong here.
Seal it with what?
Linseed oil is the preferred.
Less toxic, or is that
It's worth researching. I think that's one of the.
Linseed oil's got some toxins?
Yeah, I mean, if you look on the can, I don't know what the heck it is. I mean, it's some. And then you have to thin it. So you're using mineral spirits. And I did one this summer, and I just kept dumping it on, and it just kept soaking in. And then.
Oh yeah.
And then after it stopped soaking in, then it started not wanting to dry because it was too thick. And you have to be careful that if you don't get it all flat, the linseed oil will pool up in certain areas, and then it'll make a little scum that you have to peel off and rub out with a rag and whatnot so it dries. And it'll be sticky, but then there's different recipes for thinning it. Like, I would say on this one, we'll probably go 100% linseed oil the first time, let it dry a few days, and then do like a 50-50 mix with thinner and linseed oil. And then maybe do it another time even less linseed oil, just getting a finer film of it so that it oxidizes and dries quicker. And then finish it with like a floor wax, like a Johnson's floor wax or something, just to give it a nice seal over the oil. That's something that's not oil. And they have also used, an old recipe was using horse manure in this part and ox blood or cow's blood.
What do they do in Scotland?
And that's how they would finish the floor with blood. And that was another way of of sealing it. I don't know what it does, but it makes a nice patina on the top of the floor.
It's a nice color.
Yeah, sure.
It's a really pretty.
Kind of a rusty,
Soft reddish, yeah.
kind of a rust color, I think, is what it ends up being when it soaks in.
It's really cool.
And then you can also pigment with different clay bodies. Like if you have a black clay body that's going to be a different color, then this is a white clay body with a little tint to brown. A brown clay, all different kinds of clays are going to make a different color. So that would be the non-toxic version, is if you have a bunch of cows or goats to slaughter.
You want to go right up against.
Yeah, you can do it. They have these on poles, and you can also make it with a piece of wood, you know, a 1x6 or something, or a 1x8 that's flat.
Not as good as
And you can smooth this out, and you can just screw a handle onto them. So I just happen to have these, but we can smooth this out, and if you wet it down, you can get a really smooth finish if you just sprinkle a little water onto this as we're smoothing. And we're about at that point. I think we can. This is a small enough space that we'll be able to do all this and reach it and smooth it. So I'll go get that bucket of water. This is the other great tool for Cobb. I'll explain a little now that we're all in here. This is going to make a really nice finished wall without really having to do any kind of plaster work or anything. If this is a little drier, just with a little water on a sponge, in a few days, you can get this smoothed out with a sponge, and you can smooth out those fingerprints. See there, just with a little sponge work. And because it's flat, and I don't want to get it too wet right now, but just to demonstrate a little how it works, you can, after it's been dried out a little bit, see now I'm getting the straw exposed a little bit there, but it dries to what feels kind of like a sidewalk concrete texture, and it's hard when you knock on it. So it's same kind of thing with the floor, though. We're going to use the metal, and that gets it a real nice finish. You can, and if you use a little bit of water on that trowel, you can use a sponge if you want to hit that there with a little bit of water. Takes the material off so it doesn't stick to the trowel. Gets a little water film on top of there, and when you float that across, you can get a shiny surface with the clay. Not shiny, it's smooth, real smooth surface with just floating it. And you can do this without metal too. You can do it with, like I said, with a board that you just screw another piece of wood to it or nail, so if you have a big surface and you want to do a long piece of 1x4, the metal's real nice because you can, for washing up and clean up and everything, and you can cut real nice edges and stuff. But you can get a real smooth finish from this to that just with a couple passes. If you don't worry too much about a few little trowel lines here and there, but you can smooth them out after it hardens up a little bit more too, running the other direction. Like I said, this would be a great thing to practice on if you wanted to build like a little mudroom, back porch, shed kind of thing. Essentially, this is all free material. I mean, clay and subsoil, sand, and you can put more gravel in it in a floor too because the rocks are going to be further down. But this top layer, when you have a fine sand like this, makes a really nice smooth surface. And then the walls, you can actually do similar things too. You could take this and smooth out on the wall if you wanted a slick surface while it's still a little bit plastic, or just sponging it if you don't mind the undulations and whatnot. But it's a lot of versatility. I mean, it's for all kinds of different skill levels and for all kinds of different applications, and there's a lot of room for creativity. Like in a space like this could have been built out, like say if this was a larger living space, you could have built out just with earth, make a nice seat, or you can make niches for bookcases into the walls, just leaving less cob, or maybe putting in some like small flexible pieces of paneling or cardboard I've even seen, or cans or different things to make molds for little niches and shelves and bookcases. I've seen goldfish bowls buried into the walls that create windows from old goldfish balls. So you have like this big thick wall with this glass bubble inside of it. I've used colored bottles that stick inside of a clear jar, the neck of a colored one, and then take some non-corrugated cardboard from cereal boxes or beer cases or whatever, non-corrugated, and then take a piece of string or tape to make that tube so it doesn't fill in with the cob, and bury that on the wall with the clear on the outside so the sun comes through and the color on the inside.
What are names? We know it's mud. Mud one. You say you're straw quantity. What's your bill? What's your
Yeah, like that's how we got.
There you go. She's going to come in and help. Step up and down.
We did a Latin dance. Don't worry, it's cold.
What I've been told is that they typically do,
Definitely feels more.
either they decide to do a bigger picture or
Do we not break it?
it's something you would have
Oh, we did a much better job.
Splooge, that's it.
We've got major sploogaceous. This place was originally called the Down Home Project. MUD, the Missoula Urban Demonstration Project, became the name about 10 years ago. The first principle in saving energy with resource-efficient building design and technology is to make our buildings what we call solar ready. That means that they're longer in the east-west direction and the north-south direction is narrower.
A lot of people ask about Cobb because they're not familiar with it. Maybe how many people know what Cobb is or have heard about it? Okay, a handful. All of our ancestors knew what Cobb was. All of us, whether we're from the Americas or from Europe or from Asia or whatnot, because 80% of the world's population still lives in houses made of earth. That number is crashing rapidly. The earthen houses are being replaced with noble materials. White man materials, modern materials, you know, whatever you want to call them, which have an initial investment of a lot more money, which makes it more difficult for people to build houses. We have the same problem here. Building houses is very, very expensive, more expensive than it needs to be, and very inaccessible for low-income people to build or buy their houses. And so when I said all of our ancestors knew about Cobb, it's because at one time, nearly 100% of the people had their structures were either earthen or natural building materials. The concept of Cobb and building with silty, or not silty, mineral soil, clay, and one other thing, straw. We can talk while we're doing it too, so let's start. We've got a lot of people here, so this is great. Let's see what we can do here.
Energy that goes into a home consumes about 25% of our ecological footprint. That's the second largest chunk of our ecological impact right after transportation. So we clearly have significant potential to reduce our impact on the environment by incorporating things like passive solar design, other kinds of solar technologies for heating our water.
Okay.
It's cold. You okay?
So there can't be any dry in it.
Otherwise, we won't have any bonding.
Yeah. Well, and then also
like you're making like cookie dough.
Yeah, exactly. Like kneading it out like the breadboard. Yeah. You guys did the roll test, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Straw's amazingly strong. It's when it's dried into this. As you see, that the cob is absorbing this stuff with these dancers here almost as fast as we can. You can make them any shape, and this will work for in any mold.
Do they ever make walls out of bricks?
Sure, that's adobe. Yeah.
Oh,
that's the adobe is the brick made of earth, clay, and straw. That's the real definition of it. Yeah, yeah. And what makes this better in some sense?
You say this is better.
This is stronger.
Oh.
Because we're going to probably fill in all the way to the other side. This is the post, and there's the beam, and there's a post on each end. That would hold up the whole roof, and we could literally, where this wall is, we could build a cob wall to fill in. But in this case, since we're building a trome wall, we're going to do a little of both. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, to get your signals.
I don't have to worry about nails going through and puncturing it.
So we're going to do this. We're going to spread it out as far as we can, real thin, to get a fiber mesh down. And you'll see, just like what happened with the wall, and this is thinner, this is just going to flatten out. And I'm just going to just get it like that, and we're just going to smooth it probably up to about where this plate is, this 2x6 plate. And a little lower, actually, because then we're going to, you know, this is almost thin enough. Gets a little water film on top of there, and when you float that across, you can get a shiny surface with the clay. Not shiny, it'll be, I mean, it's smooth, real smooth surface.
We're heading out, but thanks very much. Jake.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. Good luck with all you do.
I got you dirty again, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Watch out. Thank you for coming.